York, the atmosphere. Hype the crowd, they're never tame. Mets post-game show brings the flame.
And we are live on the New York Mets post-game show. It is a West Coast W for your New York Mets, victorious over the San Francisco Giants by a score of 8-1. We are breaking down this victory. For those of you all who are just joining the live chat, I definitely appreciate it. Please spam those thumbs up buttons and spam those W's because this was a much needed victory for our New York Mets in the first game of this 6-game West Coast trip. Listen, it's late. It's just past 1 a.m. on East Coast time. For those of you all who are watching in another time zone, lucky you because it's a little bit early, but we are here even still giving you all the post-game breakdown. So please make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons and subscribe to the channel as well. Zach, how are you doing? How are you doing?
Doing great. That was an awesome win. I mean, they came out guns blazing against a Giants team that doesn't have much hitting, but their pitching is phenomenal, and they were able to tag Logan Webb for 6 runs early, and they did not let up. They scored a few more after he came out of the game, and just locked this down. That was a through and through great win, maybe one of the best wins of the year, just considering how dominant they looked. I mean, from the offensive standpoint, Clay Holmes battling through 5 innings where we thought, he'd be lucky to touch 4 or 5, and then the bullpen just came in and shut the door, didn't let the Giants get anything going. And just seeing the lineup provide, from the top of the order to the bottom of the order, everywhere they did what they needed to do to get a 5-game winning streak, keep a half-game lead up on the Phillies, and hit 60 wins. Big night.
The big 6-0 for the New York Mets this season. The big 6-0. 60-44. Your New York Mets have officially hit the big 6-0. And you are absolutely right, Zach, that this is a textbook victory. With the Phillies beating the Yankees today at Yankee Stadium, this was a much needed victory, 8-1. Clay Holmes, will get into the box score here in just a second with what Clay Holmes was able to produce, and the box score offensively as well, where they were able to get to Logan Webb early and often, and Logan Webb was only able to provide 4 innings for the San Francisco Giants before their bullpen needed to get going and get into the ball game. It was an all-around solid performance, but for those of you all who are in this live chat right now, I definitely appreciate it. It is very late, which means you all are, solidified Mets fans at this point. So smash those thumbs up buttons, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts and opinions down below in the live chat. I definitely appreciate it. I see a lot of comments rolling into the chat here. I see a lot of W's being spammed in the live chat, and that is a really good sight. It's a really good sight. It's a huge win, as you pointed out, Zach. Jay is saying W. We got Leo in the chat, James in the chat. The chat is vibrant. We got Darren in the chat, Michael in the chat, Oliver in the chat. I love it. Absolutely. Keep on hitting the live chat and let us know what you think about this win, because this was a game where you had Clay Holmes versus Logan Webb, and Logan Webb is putting up a pretty respectable season thus far for the San Francisco Giants. Clearly, that's a stacked NL West with the Padres, Giants. The Dodgers are right there. The Diamondbacks are clearly sellers, but they're only 5 games out of a wild card. That's a stacked division, as is the NL East. And going into this game and seeing this pitching matchup, Clay Holmes versus Logan Webb, you were kind of wondering, is this offense going to figure out Logan Webb early and often enough to get into that San Francisco Giants bullpen? And that's exactly what they did. And I was very happy to see that, because we've been talking about this offense time and time again, needing to score runs earlier than not. We've seen a lot of comebacks and a lot of comeback victories for the New York Mets in the seventh, eighth, and ninth innings. And we need to see more offense early on into the ball game. And this is exactly what we saw today, with the top of the lineup getting to Logan Webb, especially for two early first inning runs. But I wanted to talk real quick about Clay Holmes and the performance that he was able to put up, because it was a 5 inning performance for Clay Holmes, 1 earned run given up, 104 pitches overall. He lowers his ERA to 3.40, 6 hits, only 2 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So you see this stat line, and you know what? It did seem like he was kind of laboring a little bit in this start. You know what I mean? It didn't look like he was,
100%.
but it looked like he was giving the New York Mets all that he had to offer in this game. And even Gary Cohen said it on the broadcast today. Probably a lot of high counts, a lot more pitches than he would anticipate and that you would like in a count to count basis for each batter, especially only striking out 2 hitters in the 5 innings pitched. But he gets the job done. He hands it off to the bullpen, and it was a pretty respectable start. And we'll get into a little bit more of the discussion about Clay Holmes in the rotation, for the future of the second half, or if the Mets are going to go ahead and get a pitcher at the deadline. But what did you see out of Clay Holmes tonight? What did you like? What did you maybe not like? And what did you make of the pitching overall from the New York Mets perspective?
I mean, starting with Clay Holmes, I mean, it was a rough night early on for him, but he was able to battle through those 5 innings, and I don't think this is stated enough. Him getting through 5 was big. I mean, this is a Mets bullpen that is getting reinforcements with the likes of Gregory Soto, but so you have the ability to let guys like Jose Castillo and Rico Garcia wear it a bit if need be. And he was able to get through 5 and hand it over to Brazoban, who had himself a really nice inning. He did allow the double, I believe, to Jung Ho Lee, but it looked really good. And then Rico Garcia and then Castillo were awesome. Were awesome tonight. They did a great job shutting it down and not letting the Giants get deeper into that Mets bullpen, something the Mets were able to do to the Giants, even with that big of a lead. They really worked that bullpen tonight and made someone like Duvall throw a ton of pitches, making him unavailable, most likely, for tomorrow and maybe even Sunday. I think that's not stated enough given the firepower the Giants bullpen and the pitching staff as a whole has, wearing down their bullpen in what is going to be a 3-game set, and just good performance and good job by Mendoza, letting guys like Rico Garcia and Castillo come in and do the job. He let Rico Garcia get that second inning when you could have easily gone elsewhere, but he gave it to him and he shut the door. He shut the door on a Giants offense that really doesn't have much firepower, but something the Mets needed, keeping guys like Diaz, Garrett, and Raley fresh for the next 5 games on this West Coast trip.
And that's huge too within itself, because and the reason why that was allowed is because the offense came out and provided 8 runs, right? If you have an offense that comes out and provides you, 2, 3, 4 runs, maybe that's not the same case. And maybe that's not the same situation that Carlos Mendoza is, deciding into. And the fact that the Mets put up that many runs in this ball game was the deciding factor into putting guys like Garcia into this game and Luis Castillo to close things out. And by the way, Rico Garcia pitching 2 innings, he looked electric.
You look
He looked
great.
electric. Like,
Great.
I mean, Rico Garcia looked absolutely fantastic. This is a guy that came up with the New York Mets, this season. He was the same guy that went to the Yankees, if I'm not mistaken, really
Yeah.
didn't look the same. And then he came back to the Mets organization and he has, picked up exactly where he left off in this small sample size, just eating up innings. So 2 huge innings from Rico Garcia, handing things off to Luis Castillo to get the quote unquote save, even
Yeah.
though he doesn't get the save. But the offense is really the major thing to take away from this ball game, I would expect, because you know, things might look different with Carlos Mendoza and the bullpen utilization in the first game, on a West Coast trip where you have 6 solid games to play against really good teams that are looking up at you in, the standings, especially in the wild card. Although I know the Mets do lead the division by half a game over the Philadelphia Phillies, this was textbook offense and what you want to see and what we've all been asking for, right? With the streams, with you and myself, with Rob and myself, with all three of us, we've been asking for consistent offense from the start. And that's exactly what this lineup provided, an early lead for Clay Holmes to work with, even though he didn't have his best stuff. And, we will have the conversation here, maybe at some point this stream, talking about Clay Holmes potentially maybe moving to the bullpen in the second half if the Mets do go ahead and get a solidified starter in this rotation. That's an option, but at this point, Clay Holmes is a starter. He hasn't provided the Mets much length, but the offense, especially in Clay Holmes starts, is they're needed. They're absolutely needed, and they
100%.
provided today. I was really impressed with them. And again, 60-44 on the season. The Mets are on a roll. That's a 5-game win streak for your New York Mets. It's awesome to see. But what did you make of the offense tonight, Zach?
The offense was great. I mean, you got production from just about everyone. Lindor with a home run, 3 hits. He drove in a run. Nimmo 2 hits, and he drove in two. Soto driving one in there in the top of the ninth with that RBI single. Pete Alonso with I believe it was a sac fly or some sort of run producing out. And I think McNeil and Alonso may have been the only guys without a hit tonight of the starters, with Acuna coming in late and not getting a hit. But just great performance all around. Guys at the bottom of the order getting it done. Tyrone Taylor, Alvarez with another hit tonight, and even in the at bats where he didn't reach base, he did hit the ball well and was taking good swings. And Brett Beatty once again having himself a big night. And one thing I have to say about Brett Beatty that Gary and Keith brought up in the broadcast, since I believe it was July 1st, he has the lowest chase rate of any player in the big leagues. He is showing up when the Mets most need him to, and maybe when his career as a Met most needs him to, because he has looked great this month of July. And he looks like he's someone that can stay at third base as an everyday producer for the Mets. And if this is the Brett Beatty we have going forward, I'm all for it. Sign me up. Give him third base day in, day out. Down.
Yeah, I mean, and this third base discussion is coming at a time, especially surrounding the MLB trade deadline rumors, where you have, Ryan McMahon going to the New York Yankees to be essentially their third baseman. So they're out on Eugenio Suarez. I don't think, as per John Heyman's report last night, that the New York Mets are going to be, in on Eugenio Suarez as much as a Phillies team is, or maybe
Cubs,
Mariners
Astros.
or an Astros, right? All those teams are in on Eugenio Suarez. Maybe they're prioritizing their time this deadline in center field with a guy like Luis Robert. And clearly, we also did the live stream and we broke down the Gregory Soto trade. If you missed that, make sure to go to check that out. Zach and I went live earlier today talking about that trade from the New York Mets, and which was, an expected but an unexpected trade this early into the deadline from David Stearns and the New York Mets, which solidifies this bullpen And Gregory Soto wasn't available tonight, but a lot of reports indicate that he will be available out of the bullpen starting tomorrow for the New York Mets, joining the Mets on this West Coast trip and adding that second lefty into the bullpen. I absolutely agree with you in the fact that, you save the big guys in your bullpen for game 2 of this series, going for the series win in San Francisco to start this West Coast trip. And that is absolutely important. But, the rest of the lineup got the job done, especially with all the guys that you mentioned. And we will revisit this box score here right now as it pertains to the lineup. I mean, Brandon Nimmo going 2 for 5, 2 RBIs. Lindor, this is the one guy, right? Like, he is finding a groove. Francisco
That
Lindor,
is.
we've talked about it time and time again. Not only him, but also Pete Alonso trying to find their groove again this season, where they had a solid season earlier on and kind of, I guess, weathered away over the past couple of weeks. But Lindor primarily, especially with the lineup switch up, it doesn't really matter if he's batting leadoff or if he's batting 2. We all know this team goes as Francisco Lindor goes. And he has not been the same version of Francisco Lindor ever since that broken pinky toe that he suffered in that Dodgers series. But he's slowly starting to come back into form. He goes 3 for 5 with a home run. It was a solo home run. And he also hit a double in this game. It's really good to see. The production, any production at this point from Francisco Lindor is really good to see. And clearly, more so towards the bottom of the lineup with Beatty, Alvarez, Mauricio, each having a hit in this game. Beatty and Alvarez also scoring a run apiece. They're just having good at-bats. It doesn't matter if they get on base. It doesn't matter if they get a hit. The fact of the matter is that they are hitting the ball hard, and it seems like they are putting better at bats together in total. And the process of the better at bats is more so what I'm concerned with over the long haul of this season, especially if the Mets aren't going to prioritize third base, if they're going to go with Ronnie Mauricio, at third base and Brett Beatty at second base, or Brett Beatty at third base and Jeff McNeil at second base. It doesn't matter the combination. If Mauricio and Beatty are on this team, they're going to need to come into their own, find a way to stay hot and, stay alive, even when they're not, playing on an everyday basis, if it's a platoon basis, and their bats are going to be very valuable down the stretch of this season. And so far over the past couple of weeks, we have seen those adjustments, especially from those two guys, and I could not be more thrilled. So absolutely, you hit the nail on the head, with the bottom of the lineup in what seemed like a top heavy lineup at one point with not much production in the bottom half. I think that, there was a little bit of a spark before Alvarez came back up to this club in the second half, right? Because Alvarez has only been here for a handful of games that Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio started to take off. But especially with Alvarez back in this lineup, taking over the catching duties, they seem locked in at the plate. And even Alvarez, you know what I mean? Defensively, let alone the offense, but let's just say defensively, it looked like he was locked in defensively today. Framing pitches, just bouncing around behind home plate and getting things done. And that is exactly what I love to see. So if the Mets are able to get this type of production from the bottom of this lineup with the young guys that they possess in the bottom of this lineup, who knows what the trade deadline has to offer? We don't know if Beatty, Mauricio, or whoever else is on the table. But if this is the bottom of the lineup right now before the trade deadline, and if this is the bottom of the lineup after the trade deadline, this is the type of production that we need to see, Zach.
Oh, 100%. We need to see this production going forward. And, like you said, if they decide to add to, replace some of these guys that are in the bottom of the lineup right now, they need to make sure that they are an improvement over what we have. And I think it's easy to, improve over Tyrone Taylor offensively, but at this moment in time, unless you're going towards the high end of the trade market, you're not going to improve over Brett Beatty unless you're getting an Eugenio Suarez. I mean, Brett Beatty, the total stats aren't amazing on the year, but he has looked phenomenal. Not much better. He has looked phenomenal as of late. Dating back to the beginning of July, even the end of June. He's showing why he once was a top 20 and maybe even at one point a top 10 prospect in all of the MLB. And he's coming through. He's coming through not only with the glove but with the bat. Just taking much better at bats, being able to put the ball in the air, and not striking out as much as he once did. Even tonight, I think he got a walk in the middle innings, and that is something that we haven't seen much from Beatty. And he might not be someone who's going to walk as much as a guy like Soto, but if he can be more selective with the pitches he swings at and take better swings at pitches in the zone and put them in the air, that is a dangerous hitter given the bat speed, given the exit velocity potential with him. He can easily put 20 over the wall. And I think by the end of this year, with I think it is 12, 13, somewhere in the low teens, he could potentially eclipse that 20 home run number with a big August and September. Funny enough, you brought up Mauricio. A little bit interesting to see him pulled so early in this game. I mean, obviously, we most likely no sort of hug watch or trade on the horizon, but interesting to see, a quote unquote defensive replacement with Acuna coming in for him to play second base and then give up the error. But a little bit weird, a little bit peculiar. We haven't seen anything from any of the beat reporters. We haven't heard anything from Mendoza yet on a potential, maybe trade, maybe injury, what it might be. I'm guessing it was just some sort of, defensive replacement or just trying to get Acuna at bats. But given Vientos not playing today at DH and running with Tyrone Taylor out in center field and Jeff McNeil at DH, it makes you wonder what they might be thinking of doing with those two guys there without giving them the full workload or workload at all in what is the first of 6 games leading up to the trade deadline.
Yeah, that was something that kind of surprised me a little bit too when you talk about that defensive quote unquote replacement in this ball game when Luis Angel Acuna came into this game a little bit earlier than we expected. And wouldn't Luis Angel Acuna comes in and makes, I mean, I don't know if they scored the error on him officially. They gave it a single. It should have been an error. I mean, let's be honest. Luis Angel Acuna should have made that play. He comes into the ball game. That was a clear error. And regardless of what the scorebook ruled it was also very striking for me to see that as well. I mean, I'm sure there's a rhyme or reason for that. I'm sure in the post game that we're not watching right now, but maybe other people are watching right now, Mendoza has an answer for that. But, that was very interesting to see, especially like you said, 6 games out of this trade deadline. And as news and rumors are swirling surrounding this Mets team that just made a trade 6 days away, that's something to watch out for. Especially if the Mets are going to try to upgrade any, offensive position. I don't think they're going to upgrade third base. And therefore, if they don't upgrade third base, if depending on the type of pitcher, if it's a starter that they're looking for, maybe we see both Beatty and Mauricio stay on this team, and the Mets pivot to a Luis Angel Acuna to trade, in which we think they might be prioritizing. But I don't know. It's interesting. I don't even have an answer to be honest. Like, do you even have a beginning answer as to why Mauricio was pulled in this game? Because was there a lefty on the mound for the Giants in this game that came through when Mauricio's time was due up in the batter's box when he was potentially scheduled to be a righty? Because I don't think so at that point.
No, it was a bit away, but Matt Gage did come in the game in the top of the 7th. Mauricio is still, I guess, 6 or 7 spots away from
Yeah.
taking any type of a bat. So it's just bizarre. It's bizarre seeing that, considering given the trade deadline coming up, what the Mets might be doing with the likes of Luis Angel Acuna, giving him reps there in which he does not come through. He essentially doesn't necessarily hurt his stock, but does not make a good play and make any team necessarily very comfortable with acquiring him in any type of trade for anyone of note. But I don't know. It's weird. Mendoza's done this all year, where he's brought guys in the middle innings to be quote unquote defensive replacements, or just give them reps in the field and at the plate. So who knows? Time will tell. Given what we have heard out there, there's been pretty much nothing since the McMahon trade went down. So we will see what the Mets decide to do there. If I had to make any type of guess, you will probably see Brett Beatty on this team post deadline. As for the other three, I don't know. I don't know who will be here. I think Mauricio will probably get some calls. Vientos is apparently drawing some interest from the Cubs, or has been at least. So I expect 1, 2, maybe 3 of them to be in some sort of package for upgrades to this team, whether it's in the bullpen, in the starting rotation, or maybe center field. So the time will tell. And I guess we'll see from Mendoza in the post-game presser.
Yeah, but I think that overall, as it pertains to this game, I think that there just needs to be a clear shout out to the bullpen, 100%, especially the guys, not the mainstay guys that are in this bullpen, but the Rico Garcias and the Luis Castillos of the world that come in and get the job done, as well as the offense and providing that run support that we have truly really wanted to see out of this offense time and time again. And, on a consistent basis, they haven't been able to perform the run production in which they produced tonight for the New York Mets, and that absolutely pays dividends. If this is the New York Mets offense that we are going to be getting more consistently, I don't expect them to put up 8 runs, in many ball games moving forward, but I'm talking about 4, 5, 6 runs in a ball game to provide a cushion for your starting pitcher. That will pay dividends in the long run with pitchers going deeper into the ball game. Maybe not Clay Holmes, and there's a separate discussion to be had about Clay Holmes, but other pitchers in this rotation going deeper into the ball game with some run cushion and saving some of the bullpen innings that they would be throwing. So this is, let me get back into the chat here. And by the way, if you all are here on this late night, we definitely appreciate it. Keep dropping those comments in the live chat section. Keep hitting those thumbs up buttons on this stream. It definitely helps out the channel grow. If you enjoy these post-game conversations, keep on hitting those thumbs up buttons. And if you're new, whether you're watching the replay or watching this live, make sure to subscribe to the channel. But let's go ahead and get into the chat here saying, Eric is saying, feel like this team needs a legit starter, and putting Holmes back in the bullpen outlook of the second half. I made a video today about Sandy Alcantara. If the Mets would take a chance on Sandy Alcantara and trading in a package with Alcantara and Bender, or just trading for Alcantara straight up, and what that could take. Now, I think that what Sports Illustrated put up as a preliminary deal, I think it's a little bit too much, especially given the outlook of Alcantara, the past year and a half outside of the 2024 season where he missed with Tommy John surgery. But whether it's Alcantara, whether it's Lugo, Keller, I mean, you name it, Edward Cabrera, I think that there's definitely room for a starter on this team. And if there is a starter coming to the New York Mets, we saw the Gregory Soto trade happen earlier today. A lefty bullpen option was needed. There's going to be more bullpen help without a doubt. I mean, even Andy
100%.
Martinez said he'd be shocked if there was not another bullpen arm coming to the New York Mets. But do the Mets stop there? Do the Mets stop at 2 bullpen arms in the bat, or are they going to also be in the market for a starter? And if they do get a starter, I think that no matter what tier starter it is, that is the clear indication, if the Mets go out and do get a starter, that they want Clay Holmes to transition in this second half at some point. Maybe not right away, but at some point, Clay Holmes transitioning into a bullpen arm for this team, because we have seen time and time again where Clay Holmes has been fantastic. He's been electric for the first 4 to 5 innings, but he cannot get over that hump. He cannot get into the sixth inning consistently, and he kind of fizzles out. So where do you see the Mets at this point looking for a starter? Or maybe they just bring up one of Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean, and that is the guy that they put into the back end of the rotation to move Clay Holmes. However you shake it, whether it's a trade deadline acquisition, whether it's a prospect call up and moving Clay Holmes, do you see Clay Holmes as a part of this rotation come playoff baseball?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Clay Holmes definitely has the ability to be a starter for the rest of the season, for the postseason. I would be worried about his ability to stay, not be gassed, so to speak, come playoff time, given what happened to the likes of Manaya and Luis Severino last postseason, guys that are established starters and have been doing it for a longer period of time, versus Clay Holmes, who is in his first year starting for a long time since his rookie season. So it's interesting to see. I think the Mets do have faith in him to stick there long term, but I do think they are out there shopping for a starter. Maybe not super aggressive, but if the opportunity does present itself, I do think they will jump on it. Who they go with, I don't know. It's weird. I think Stearns and his approach, it screams them wanting to go to someone with contract, with a lengthier contract, the ability to be under contract for a couple seasons after this one. But given what you're hearing for the projections of the likes of Sandy Alcantara, who is not having a good year, who has been fairly bad, even with the last few starts being pretty good, you might see him decide to kind of shift course and go for a more rental option in a Merrill Kelly. Given their interest in the Mets minor league system, whether that was for them because they thought that the Mets might be interested in the likes of Eugenio Suarez, or maybe they're scouting their Double A and maybe even Single A system for someone for players to essentially take over for some of these rental pieces that they will be shipping off in the likes of Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. So I think that would be a great fit for the Mets, Merrill Kelly, given his ability to get blank, given his postseason performance with the Diamondbacks back in 2023. And given the Mets' depth at the position in the deeper parts of the minor leagues, I think Will Salmon came out and said that the Mets would be willing to trade from their stockpile of arms further away, not touching the guys that are a bit closer in the likes of Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and Brandon Sproat, especially with their upside. But seeing guys like a Jack Wenninger, Nate Dome being moved is probably not out of the question, especially if it nets you a guy that can be an anchor for the rotation, maybe not have the true ace upside like some other starters do, but the ability to provide, length and consistency that you aren't getting from guys like Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga, and Frankie Montas to a degree, and maybe even Manaya given his injuries this season.
I look at a guy like Merrill Kelly, who's a clear rental this season, and I look at it as a perfect fit for the New York Mets. And I made a video about, Kelly and Eugenio Suarez coming in a package deal. But if the New York Mets were to go out and reach out to the Diamondbacks in just a, one for whatever type of deal for Merrill Kelly alone, that would make a lot of sense, so that Merrill Kelly can go into this rotation and move Holmes into the bullpen. And then, you have Holmes for the next 2 seasons after this one. Clearly, if they, started him out as a starter this season, I would have to imagine that they're going to keep him as a starter, given his overall success, his ERA is 3.40. I mean, the overall metrics have been respectable, even given, his inability to go deep into ball games. Next season in 2026, he will be a starter in this rotation again, I am assuming, no matter if they move him to the bullpen or not in the second half of this season. So if you go out there and acquire a rental starting pitcher, that is the perfect scenario, because you're not going to have that rental presumably in the 2026 or on the 2026 roster. You'll
Mm.
have them offloaded, and Clay Holmes will still be able to keep that starting rotation spot in which they signed him clearly to be, in this past off season. So if that is a temporary move to go ahead and get a guy like Merrill Kelly, who has the accolades, who has the numbers overall this season, but let alone the playoff accolades, to go ahead and move into the rotation and move a Clay Holmes into the bullpen for the second half of the season, Clay Holmes is his spot is not jeopardized in this rotation
Going
moving
forward.
forward with such a move. And Merrill Kelly is still 35 years old, so he's not going to really be a re-sign candidate anyways, for the New York Mets or any other team if he is moved from the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I think that would make all the sense in the world. And if the Mets are prioritizing a guy like Merrill Kelly, that is exactly the type of scenario that I see playing out. Moving Clay Holmes into the bullpen for the second half, but still having him be a starter or starting the season in 2026 as a starter. I guess until they wait and see how the season plays out and how his future outlook as a starter looks like. That's what I see, honestly.
Yeah, no, and even with him potentially moving into the bullpen post deadline, or at least sometime in August or September, he's at 113 and two-thirds innings right now. He has already eclipsed his season high, over his career, and that number is only going to grow barring any injury. This is someone that is going to probably touch, even going into the bullpen, probably 140 to 150 innings, which is still a solid amount for a starting pitcher at at this day, in this day and age of the MLB, where starters just don't give you the length that they once did. And if he was to, say, stick in the rotation through September, he could be pushing 180, 190 innings if he does have himself two really good months. And tonight was kind of a barometer for him. He eclipsed 100 pitches. I don't think he's done that too much this season, but to get there and probably pitch what I believe to be two of his sharper innings in the fourth and the fifth, given the pitch total, was pretty nice to see. So I don't think that the Mets are necessarily losing faith in his ability to start for the rest of the season, but I think it's obviously something the Mets should be considering and looking into, given what else you have in the rotation, not just because of Clay Holmes himself. Because I think Kodai Senga is someone you look at as a starter. He's not moving to the pen, and Frankie Montas, even though he is probably does not have the upside of Clay Holmes, he does have the pedigree as a starter and as a one-time vote getter as a Cy Young candidate. So this is someone that I expect to uh, keep faith with the Mets brass in terms of starting. It's just a matter of something falls into their lap. It's not necessarily, I don't think the Mets are going to go out there and shop too hard for a quote unquote Clay Holmes replacement in the rotation this trade deadline. But if someone like Merrill Kelly becomes available at a good price, I could see them 100% making that deal.
Yeah, and again, they don't really need to get a Clay Holmes replacement because, as David Stearns mentioned in the press conference with McLean, I'm assuming he's talking about McLean and Sprout.
Yeah.
If they want to move one of those guys into the rotation in the back end and just move Frankie Montas up a spot, maybe that is also a scenario where they put Clay Holmes into the bullpen and they just backfill the rotation with one of the prospects. Because I do think that one, maybe both of these prospects are going to be coming up in the second half. And maybe that's what David Stearns was thinking all along. Let's go ahead and sign Clay Holmes. Let's try him out in the rotation for the first half, and let's just see where it takes us. And in the second half, what we're going to do is go shop for a rental starting pitcher like a guy like Merrill Kelly. But if one of those guys doesn't present itself, and if it's not a smart move to happen at the deadline, we have these prospects. I don't think that they anticipated Nolan McClain moving up this far along this fast this season. I don't think anybody anticipated that. But Brandon Sproat, 100%, I think he was all part of the plan, even in, the offseason and spring training, that he was going to get a spot on this team in the second half to see what he can do. So I think that no matter how you shake it, whether you go external or internal, in the starting rotation. I think that Clay Holmes, no matter what it is, you have the ability to move him into the rotation at least for a couple of rotation turns to see how the replacement does. And that would be more so geared towards the prospect, right? Because you don't know what kind of production, at the MLB level that they're going to get you. But if you go ahead and get a guy like Merrill Kelly, then you can pretty much pencil in Clay Holmes into the bullpen for the foreseeable future of this season. And then when the offseason, hits, just slot him back into the rotation for the 2026 team. So there's a lot of ways that this can happen. And I think that Mets fans and David Stearns realize the repercussions potentially of just keeping Clay Holmes in this rotation moving forward. There's only so much you can do when a guy continuously proves that he is a 4 2/3 or 5 inning pitcher rather than a 5 2/3, 6 or 6+ inning pitcher. I mean, how many of Clay Holmes starts? I don't have it in front of me. I'm not going to pull it up, but how many of Clay Holmes starts this season has he actually completed 6 successful innings? It's got to be maybe 2 or 3, if that. And
Seven,
so,
I'm saying.
what was that?
7.
S- Of how many starts?
7 starts, 6 innings completed, and then he's pitched into the 6th inning, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 more times.
Okay, of how many games started total?
Oh, how many total? 4, 9, 14, 19, 20.
Okay, so 20 starts. So maybe he's provided a little bit more length than I had originally thought. But I mean, is that sustainable? Is the other question, I guess, that you could assume. Because from what I hear from the Mets fan base and from what I see on a Clay Holmes daily basis, is that, or every fifth day basis, is that he doesn't provide that length. To be honest with you,
Not at this point, at least.
and not at this point. Maybe earlier on in the season when his innings were still a little bit limited, sure. But when his innings, as you stated, are 110 plus innings already, which is the most that he's pitched since maybe his rookie season, how realistic is that for him to continue to get into that 6th inning? As of recent, it's shown to not be as consistent as we would all hope. So there is a viable discussion to be had there, but who knows? Maybe the Mets do believe in him in being a starter in the second half. But once playoff baseball comes around, I just can't see Clay Holmes starting a playoff game for this team. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that they would take the chance with that. I think that they would much rather have him coming out of the pen and building around the top 3 being playoff starters in Manaya, Senga, and Peterson. And that's just how I think it's going to shake out. So a lot of things that could be shaking out in the rotation, but this is kind of an interesting comment, and we can kind of segue into this as, again, we are here very late as of 1:45 a.m. So hopefully you all appreciate the stream happening. Keep on dropping those comments in the live chat. Keep on hitting those thumbs up buttons and subscribing to the channel, as well as your New York Mets are now winners of 5 straight ball games going into game 2 later tonight, because it is the 26th already. But what about this? There's a lot of smoke surrounding Luis Robert Jr., and we've talked about it. We've talked about it on the channel. We talked about it earlier in the live stream that we did around 2 p.m. But there's another name that is a former Met that is also presumably on the market in Harrison Bader. Now, this is a little bit of, I guess, kind of a joking kind of comment with Darren here too. But I did make a video about Harrison Bader because he is having a very respectable offensive performance in the first half. Am I fooled by those offensive numbers from Harrison Bader in a Twins uniform? No. But do you think that there's a potential chance for a reunion there, or do you think that it's going to be basically Cedric Mullins, Robert Jr., or bust from the center field perspective?
I think Cedric Mullins at this point is off the table for the Mets. I don't see them pivoting that way given his skill set. It's a slightly better Tyrone Taylor out there in center field, at least offensively, and then defensively, you're leaving a lot on the table. So I think right there, it's pretty much a wash given what Cedric Mullins' skill set is at this point. Harrison Bader is an interesting one for me because even though he's having himself a very nice offensive season, the advanced metrics really do show that he's maybe not supposed to be playing this well. And while you do have him being a very, very good defensive fielder out in the outfield, I don't think that really moves the needle whatsoever for a Mets team. The only real way I see them going after him would be to add another true outfielder to this mix of outfielders that the Mets do have. Right now they really only have three true outfielders on the roster at this point in Marte's career. He is not a fielder; he is strictly a DH. And Jeff McNeil, while he is a good fielder and he can play in left and center field, he is not a traditional outfielder. You know, he came up as a third baseman or a second baseman. So I could see maybe the Mets going in that direction if they feel they absolutely need to add there. But given the performance of someone in AAA by the name of Drew Gilbert, I think if they cannot get Luis Robert Jr., that will be an option for the Mets post-trade deadline. And why do I say that? I note earlier in the week, David Stearns had mentioned that he does not see any of the Mets position players coming up and being impactful come post-trade deadline, September, postseason, what have you. But today he did say that Drew Gilbert is someone that is gaining a lot of favor, whether that's with the Mets or other teams, we don't know. But clearly, his performance over this month of July, dating even back into the middle of June, is something to watch out for. He is someone that's catching the eye of David Stearns and other executives in the Mets organization, and I would not be surprised if the Mets decide to pivot that way if they are looking for a true offensive upgrade in center field, if they're not able to land a Luis Robert.
Agree. I think that that is going to be the primary option for the Mets in going with Luis Robert Jr. And I think that if Drew Gilbert is, continuing the pace that he has been on over the past couple of weeks, because he started off this season. Last season was not a great season. Injuries mixed in between. The same thing could be said for Jet Williams, and they're both having kind of rebound seasons, but more so Jet Williams than Drew Gilbert. But Drew Gilbert over the past couple of weeks has hit a hot streak. Let's be honest. He
Two
has
more
hit
home
a
runs
hot
tonight.
streak. I mean, yeah, even tonight, I mean, he is looking like a different version of himself. And I think everything is fluid, to be honest with you, depending on what happens with the deadline, even though, so this is how I see it playing out. And yes, you are 100% correct, Ray. Gilbert is and has been my guy from the start. And the fact that he is my guy does not take away from the fact that I think that he is still the most likeliest of trade candidates from the New York Mets farm system from a positional player perspective, because he is on the cusp of being ready to appear for a major league team. And if you take what David Stern said in his last press conference, that would mean that he is not going to be coming up. But I do agree with you, Zach. If they are not able to strike a deal with any team for a center fielder, and at this point, let's be honest, I don't think that Harrison Bader is going to fool anybody in this organization. I do understand that he has 12 home runs this season. He hit 12 home runs all of last season, so he is well on his way to eclipse that. He is at a 765 OPS. He's having a pretty decent season. I don't think that the Mets are in on Harrison Bader. I think it's Cedric Mullins. I think it's Luis Robert Jr. And I think it's honestly at this point, Luis Robert Jr. or bust for the New York Mets, or they're just going to rely on Drew Gilbert being maybe a September call up and seeing how that plays out at that point. But I still think that the most likeliest of options, given what we've heard with all the reports, I mean, there's a lot of smoke surrounding the Mets and Luis Robert Jr.
A
And
lot of
so you
stuff.
can take, there's a lot. I mean, a ton of MLB insiders are talking about Robert Jr. and the Mets right now. And so you can take that one of two ways. You can take that as, okay, this is probably more likely than not happening. Or you can take that as, listen, there's no way that this Mets organization with this current regime is letting the media know that they are this interested in this particular player, and therefore it's not happening. So it could be a tale of two cards here. And the only other option, because I still think to a degree when we talk about the center field position in the second half for the New York Mets, I still think Rob is correct in that, McNeil serving as an option for more offense and also playing center field on a higher basis in the second half is fine, but you're at some point going to need to rely on a positional player that is a true center fielder, which is only going to come from within the organization, from the farm system. And right now, I think that's going to be Drew Gilbert over Jet Williams. Whether people agree or disagree with that, that's up to them. I don't see any way that Jet Williams is on this major league roster in this second half of the New York Mets. I think that it's going to be Drew Gilbert in the outfield, or it's going to be bust if the Mets go with any positional player, like you just said. Or they could just go with Luis Robert Jr. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I would like to think that the Mets, at this point, if the Mets have identified Robert Jr. as a true difference maker, if they believe in the recent surge and a change of scenery, go ahead and do it. I'm not going to bat an eye. I don't care what is given up. And like Easy is saying in the chat here, there's, Nightingale even said that, and this is not the comment that Easy said, but
Yeah.
Nightingale says the White Sox supposedly love Vientos. Are you doing this, Zach? Because I made a video about this. I talked about Luis Robert Jr. I made a video about this yesterday. If it's Vientos for Robert Jr. straight up, I understand that it sounds like an overpay. I'm still going to do that. What about you?
A lot of Mets fans are going to be unhappy with Vientos for Robert Jr., but Robert Jr. is a super, 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 super talented player. I mean, there's a reason he finished as the 12th MVP vote getter in, I believe it was 2022 or 2021. He has a ton of tools. He has power. He has speed. He has the ability to field the ball at the highest of levels out in center field. So this is someone that would be an upgrade over what we have in center field at the moment. And, everyone loves Vientos, myself included, especially given what he did at the end of last season and especially in the postseason. But Vientos is a man without a position on this team. He's a first baseman at best if he's in the field, if not just a straight up DH. And the Mets, if they are moving him to DH, they are kind of shutting themselves off from the ability to sign someone more prestigious in the offseason or potentially acquire someone at this deadline, whether it be guys from the Orioles and a Ryan O'Hearn or Ramon Laureano or who, what have you, name any other player out there. Vientos is not having a good year, and if that's what it takes to get a guy like Luis Robert, go out and do it. You want to stay loyal to your guys, but Luis Robert is under contract for 2 more years, and he is someone that potentially could grow on this team and become what Jorge Soler was for the Atlanta Braves. And not to backtrack too much, I do want to mention two things about Drew Gilbert that stand out to me. Over the last 30 games, he is hitting, I think it's 310 for batting average, and has an OPS just south of 1,000 at 990 and hitting 6 home runs. That is a lot, and given that and the fact that he is Rule 5 eligible come this winter, that is someone that either needs to be called up to the 40-man roster at the very latest come this offseason, or trade. There's two options for Drew Gilbert. The Mets are not going to let him walk for nothing. They did not trade someone like Justin Verlander and eat that money for him for no reason. And this is also someone that was in the futures game just a few years ago. He is someone that was highly touted as a prospect, as a top 100, I think at one point a top 50 prospect.
Yep.
This is someone that has trade value or is valued by the organization to play the position of center field, given the fact that he is playing that pretty much every day down in AAA.
I didn't even know that he was Rule 5 eligible. That's a
Yeah.
very intriguing point to add on to that. And you are absolutely correct. You do not bring a guy like this into your organization to just head into the Rule 5 draft, right? You either bring him up and see what he has, or right when the Mets were doing all that, selling in 2023 at the deadline under Billy Epler, you go ahead and you flip some of these prospects that you get, and you go ahead and get, your guy that you identify on the trade market when you are a contender like the Mets are this season. So it's one or the other. I think that Drew Gilbert is the guy to call up in the second half if he remains on this roster, or he is the most likely to be shipped out. You need to do something with him. And that's the bottom line. And I do agree with you, right? Like, if it takes Mark Vientos, for Luis Robert Jr., and if that's who the White Sox really want, I'm not saying the White Sox are going to, solidly want him. I mean, that's only the reports that we've been seeing preliminarily.
Mhm.
Things could They could want a different guy. But for right now, if the situation is Vientos for Robert Jr., you do that 100% because you are absolutely right. If you keep Vientos in this organization alongside a guy like Beatty and Mauricio, you are handcuffing yourself in the DH position long term for future upgrades, where there are a couple of bats on this market upcoming that could solve the DH problem for you with one signing, and that's about it. And would you take that chance with Vientos, given the numbers that he's posting this season? Forget what he posted last season. I understand that, but we don't have that much of sample size to go off of Vientos after that one season. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's a no-brainer, especially having Luis Robert under control, especially given the upside of Luis Robert. At worst, he's a platoon player, like we mentioned, especially with the lefty-righty splits. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And I think that this point of needing to do something with Drew Gilbert and surround the conversation around Drew Gilbert in that Rule 5 eligible draft that is upcoming, here in a couple of months, I agree. That only adds fuel to the fire of the Mets needing to do something with him, whether it's calling him up or trading him off for a piece that they identify this season. So that's a great point by you. Other than that, we're going to probably do a live stream tomorrow talking about, more trade deadline rumors and trade deadline talks, because we've seen a plethora of rumors from MLB insiders today alone, as three notable trades happened. And, well, especially with Soto. What was the other notable trade? Was it
McMahon.
Soto and McMahon, and who else?
Or was it
That's
just
it,
Josh
right?
Naylor the night
So there's
before?
just two. So three since the Naylor trade. Okay, so three since the Naylor trade and two today. I think that, especially what was happening today, I mean, Robert did get pulled from the lineup today, and a lot of people thought that that was,
Disappointing.
meaning that he was going to get traded. I had my reservations about that, but I don't know. They said that it was groin, quote unquote, groin tightness. I don't know. maybe the White Sox are prepared to deal him. Maybe they have, the end stage talks happening. Maybe we see something here in the next couple of hours as we're sleeping. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe. Um,
I
stuff is playing out, and that's, I
yeah.
think, what is the most important thing to take away here is that in this MLB trade deadline, we've seen three early moves from teams in the Yankees, Mariners, and Mets happen 6 days, 7 days prior to the actual trade deadline. And I think that there's going to be a sense of urgency amongst teams moving forward. So you and I will be live tomorrow, around midday, talking about the MLB trade deadline. We're going to be talking about this series as well. I know that this stream overall, in which is supposed to be a post game stream, as we're an hour into the stream, is supposed to be talking about the game recap. But at this point of the season, we can't help talking about the MLB trade deadline
A lot
and what
going on.
makes the Mets better. There's a lot going on. There's too much going on. So, as it pertains to going back to this game, it's a great win for the New York Mets. It's a great offensive performance. And that's the number one thing that I take away from it is that the offensive performance, the lineup, they showed up to play. They gave Clay Holmes some breathing room, and they gave this pitching staff in general and Mendoza options to perform with the lesser guys and saving guys like Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, etc. for tomorrow in a series win situation. So that's what I got for the rest of this post game stream.
Yeah, great win. Great job by the offense. Great job by the bullpen, and Clay Holmes too did a solid job getting through five. Uh, one thing that's not stated enough, I wrote it up earlier. The Mets getting into that Giants bullpen, they ate through a few of their pitchers, which will play a factor in tomorrow and potentially Sunday's game, especially against a team that does not hit too well but does have elite pitching in the San Francisco Giants. The Mets did what they needed to do to start off the series on the right foot and put themselves in a position to not only win the series but potentially sweep the opening the opening series of the West Coast trip. And it was a good night to be a Mets fan. They didn't give us much to stress about. It was fairly stress free from start to finish, which is something you can't say we've had too much of so far this season. So great win. Can't wait to get going tomorrow and talking about more trade deadline stuff, and hopefully breaking down another big Mets win tomorrow night.
So you're saying that the Mets didn't make our hearts pump this game this night, and that's something that cannot be said often so far this season. You're absolutely right, Zach. So I appreciate everyone being here with us. We're just over an hour on this stream. That's going to do it for us on this Mets post game stream. Again, please, if you are in this live chat or if you are watching the replay, smash the thumbs up buttons, subscribe to the channel. If you are new to this channel, I definitely appreciate the support. For those of you all who dropped the comments in the live chat, I definitely appreciate it. Continue. If there's any point in which you rewatch this stream and you have a different point or a new perspective that you want to let us know about, drop the comments in, the stream or under the stream in the comment section. Even after this stream is done, I definitely appreciate it. Make sure to follow all of us on social media. You can follow me on X, TikTok, Instagram, all that good stuff. You can follow Zach as well. I'm going to actually put up a banner at some point tomorrow on the stream so that they can find you, because I know that you've been doing your due diligence on all these mock trades, Zach. You've been doing a really good job. So you all should definitely follow Zach moving forward, especially as it pertains to not only this trade deadline, but the overall Mets season. I absolutely appreciate it. Really good way to start off this West Coast trip. Get a series win tomorrow, and let's hopefully be talking about a series sweep come Sunday between the Mets and the Giants. So we'll see you all on the stream tomorrow. Definitely appreciate it. As always, let's go Mets, and a lot more MLB trade deadline talks going to be going down on the channel. I've already posted a video as of last night and today. So you've got two brand new videos. If you haven't checked them out, go check them out. Links are in the description down below. I definitely appreciate it. Let's go Mets. See you all tomorrow.
Let's go Mets.